A very common question I get asked all the time is, how on earth do I look after all of my plants, 100 plus and counting? Where do I find the time in my busy schedule to do this? So I'm going to tell you my own personal maintenance hacks, tricks and tips that I do to look after all of my plants, keeping them looking gurt lush. So we are going to start with watering. Knowing when to water your plants will save you an incredible amount of time. I have talked in great length on this channel about the baker cake method, where you're propping in your little finger into your plant or using a stick to test it's wet or not. I stand by this method a lot. I do this all the time. Another thing I do is lift up my plants to see if they're light as a feather or feeling really weighty. These two methods are really quick, easy and simple, so you can do this at any given moment, at any time when you are staring at your plants. If I find some plants that are in need of water, I try to water these plants there and then when I am testing them, otherwise I will just forget, so I try to do this as soon as I notice it. I've also tried to create a habit of leaving a full watering can, or at least filled with some water, aside somewhere at all times, so that if I do spot a plant that needs watering, I know I have water very quickly to hand to water these plants, saving me time this way, and then I'm not having to battle myself with the fuss of going to fill up a watering can. It's just a little habit I'm trying to get into. Plus, if you're letting your water get to room temperature, your plants will love that, considering at the minute water from your tap is freezing cold. So having that water to hand at a room temperature is also really, really handy. When I water my plants, I always add a little bit of tap safe, which I brought from an aquatic store, into my watering can, so I know that any of the chemicals that are treated in our UK waters, especially chlorine, is taken out, and my plants seem to prefer this instead of water straight from the tap. Next, I'm going to talk about watering my moss poles. I am increasing the amount of moss poles that I have by the day at this point, and I am becoming moss pole city here in my house. So keeping my moss poles moist at all times is really, really crucial to the growth of my plants. So as you may have noticed in a lot of my videos or on social media, is that there's always like some weird bottle of a previous drink that I have left in my moss poles. This is because I found a really, really useful hack a little while ago, that is leaving these bottles full of water and then tipping these bottles upside down into your moss poles and letting the water seep out on its own. This is a really, really great time saving tip and hack, and I have never looked back at any other way of watering my moss poles. That's because the moss is acting like a wick in this situation, and the water will drain out as and when the moss needs it. It kind of allows you to just let the moss pole water itself on its own without that much looking after or time spent watering them. This is also great because you're recycling and reusing these plastic bottles that you would throw away. So you're kind of killing two birds in one stone there with that little hack, trick, time saving, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a really, really good one to do. Having the right shape of moss pole does help save time in the management of them. I really love the D-shaped moss pole, which is this acetate bent into the D shape, and then we have the chicken wire at the front, which exposes the moss and the plant can grow up that way. I find the D-shaped moss poles retain water a lot longer than the complete open ones, so it cuts down on the time that I need to water them. The only time that watering my moss poles becomes more frequent is when it gets really hot and sunny and my moss is drying out that just a little bit quicker than usual. So combining the trick of the bottle watering method as well as a really good moss pole will save you so much time and energy and will fit perfectly within your busy schedule. The next maintenance I want to talk about is pruning and tidying your plants, and I mainly mean like cutting off dead or damaged leaves. This is something, again, I do as and when I see it, and always have my trusty little snips around so I can do it there and then in that quick split second to do it. Otherwise I just will forget. It is a really good habit to get a hold of in trimming off these dead or damaged leaves. When I say damaged, I'm meaning heavily pest infected. Having yellowing leaves like this means the plant is focusing its energy onto the dying leaf, whereas if you can it off, it refocuses that energy into new growth. Yellowing leaves are kind of more of a target for pests, as most pests are attracted to the colour yellow, so they will target that plant if there are yellow leaves still attached to it. So cutting them off when you see them is a really good way of trying to keep those pests off your plant. Which brings me very smoothly onto pest checking, which is another really big maintenance task I do with my plants. The best time I find myself being able to fit in pest checking within my busy schedule is after I've finished work. I've just come home from work, or at night when I'm just sat on my sofa just allowing myself to get brain rot from social media. I kind of put my phone down and then go and do some pest checking and rechannel my time into something more productive. I find evenings are really a great way of pest checking because you have to go around with a torch, and for me, going around with a torch really focuses my attention onto the plant I am looking at, and I can really examine it in my head anyway. And also it feels like a really fun detective murder mystery game, especially if one of your plants has recently died from pests. We're now on a murder mystery quest at night trying to find these pests. I'm going to move on to cleaning my plants, which is an important task in itself, because if a plant is covered in dust, it won't be able to photosynthesize, won't be able to produce food, and it won't be able to live. So making sure your plant's as dust free as possible is really good. How do I fit this into my busy schedule? About once a month I will take my bigger plants and shove them into my shower and give them a really good wash down with the shower head. Cleans the plants, gets rid of all of the dust, waters the plants at the same time, and it also can knock off any pests that are lingering around. So it kind of is an all-rounder great activity to do. With smaller plants, if I do have that rare free day off where I have nothing planned whatsoever, I will get a little microfiber cloth, a little bowl of warm water with horticultural soap, take the microfiber cloth and clean all of the leaves. I tend to do that with the smaller plants rather than the big ones, because the big ones I know I can just shove in the shower. Last but not least, the most time-consuming job and maintenance is repotting. I am the worst at repotting my plants. I am very forgetful, lazy, also can never really afford soil. I always have a very limited stock of soil ready to repot my plants, so I am probably the worst person for repot my plants. So when I do repot my plants, I usually save this for that rare free day where I can dedicate literally half a day to doing a repot marathon mass and repot a lot of my plants all together in one go. In my head, I think this would create less mess to clean up compared to doing one at a time every now and then. I tend to also just like leave my plants until they absolutely need that repot. I'm talking about plants where the roots are pouring out of the bottom, or they're bending the nursery pot, or the new growth is starting to look small. I'm really bad at really pushing my plants until that point to repot, and then I will do my mass repot migration into their new pots all in one go on that day off. I find it very therapeutic as well, so I'd rather do it when I'm not pressed for time either, and then it feels really good to get them all done together. I work full-time hours between 2 jobs, so spare time is really limited for me, but with those maintenance tips and tricks that I do, I have still managed to keep my plants alive, looking green and lush. Other than that, I would really recommend maybe giving yourself at least 2 to 3 hours every 3 days or so, just to give yourself some time to spend with your plants. Even if it is at night with a torch and you're spending the time with your plants then, just do it when you're thinking of them and act on your impulse thoughts to do things, because then these tasks and jobs will get done and then they won't be so overwhelming. If you want to diagnose your plants and their problems, then I would recommend that video right there to go and check out. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye, bee lovers. Bye.